Now, I want to go back to you made a comment about as you start scaling, being able to outsource and hand off maybe some of that book work or some other office work or whatever it may be. I mean, depending on people's areas of interest and talent and skill where they should be putting their time. What are some other factors that producers need to consider before they decide to scale their operation?
Oh, well, okay. So factors to consider before you scale. So many times growth happens before the financials are ready for the growth. Um, you know, for instance, man, I made good money on that pen of cattle. Next time I'm going to buy three. Well, buying three pens as opposed to one takes a larger equity requirement. It takes a lot more working capital. It takes a lot more equity horsepower to make it work. So don't outgrow your balance sheet, and more importantly, your cash flow ability, your working capital situation. Because if you get within 60 days of getting to the finish line on that pen of cattle and you are flat broke, you don't have any cash to move, that makes for some interesting conversations with your banker. So work with your team on, okay, I want to grow. Can I financially do that? Um, don't outgrow your working capital is really, and that's hard because the market is the driving factor of the working capital. We're tied to the CME and you know, but did you use price protections to put a floor on there so the board drops back 20, but I'm still selling at 10 over that. That's a working capital. Um, That's good. I don't know. I guess I'm at a loss for words on that, but don't outgrow your balance sheet. Definitely don't outgrow your working capital.
Is there anything else you ask for from customers when they come to you saying they want to scale and, maybe that's going to require a bigger note than in the past? I mean, are you asking about um, how they're going to manage labor, if they're going to need additional employees or anything else besides just looking at their numbers? You talked working capital and cash flow, but are there other factors you are asking them about?
So when somebody comes to me and wants to start a relationship, yeah, of course we dive into the numbers because that's what really drives it all. But I always go to the ranch first, before we shake hands on a deal or anything. I think it's very important to go and actually see the operation, see what they've got going, and ask about their 10-year plan. Where you want to be in 10 years? Are we just trying to survive today, which is part of the process sometimes. We just got to get through today. But where do you want to go? How are we going to get there? What's that look like? How fast do you want to go? So there's a whole gamut of questions to ask, um, and it just depends on each person. I don't have a set checklist by any means, but where you want to go and how are we going to get there?
We've brought up long-term goals a couple times in this conversation. How much time each year do you think you spend talking with each individual customer and just checking in on those long-term goals, whether they've remained the same or changing or anything like that?
Not enough. I think it's so easy to be busy. It's so the comment I make is it's too easy to be too busy, when you're living life and trying to run a business and run a family, be in the family, and um, it's something we easily lose sight of in the day to day. But um, personally, my wife and I, now it doesn't always happen this way, but we try and sit down quarterly and say, okay, where are we going? Or at least a couple times a year. All right, what are we doing? What do we need to cut? Where do we need to go? And those conversations aren't always fun, but you still need to have them. So that's that would be what I would say, I guess.
They are, they can be challenging, but I always find some relief in at the end when we've talked about it. And my husband and I have a whiteboard with, 1, 5, and 10-year goals and kind of a few quarterly things. And it's challenging because sometimes you sit there and it's like, well, I don't know what I want, but we usually know what we don't want, and that's sometimes where we start.
Yeah. Yeah, my grandpa had a saying, what's easy usually isn't right, and what's right usually isn't easy. So
Mm-hmm.
the challenge, as you said, you just got to embrace it.
Folks, if you enjoyed this conversation, be sure to listen to the full conversation right here on YouTube or on your favorite podcast player by searching for Casual Cattle Conversations. Happy ranching.